In observance of ADHD Awareness Month, we are shedding light on the alternative treatments, lifestyle adjustments, and natural remedies that could change the way you think about ADHD treatment. Let's welcome Dr. Kristina Carman, naturopathic doctor and nutritional therapist of Tiny Fish Company Nutrition and Functional Medicine. Dr. Kristina, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I do want, before we get into the holistic treatments, can you give us a comprehensive understanding of what ADHD is?
Yeah, certainly. So ADHD is a neurodegenerative disorder, and I'm using the phrase disorder very lightly because I think very much coming from my perspective, when we start putting disorders on different people, it changes the energy behind it. But ADHD presentation basically means that they're either it's genetic, or either it's environmental, or either it's lifestyle driven changes in emotional responses, maybe because of something going on within the brain or physiologically within the body. And ADHD can manifest in 3 different subclasses. So you know, just saying someone has ADHD, you know, it's a little bit more complex than that. So it definitely would warrant a little deeper investigation whether it is in fact ADHD or maybe it's something else. But yeah. Okay,
can it present in adulthood?
Most certainly.
And was it always there?
Most certainly.
Okay, so what are the causes of ADHD?
Okay, so now this is where it gets really gray and where it can get really complex. There's lots of different causes. Some people are just naturally predisposed to it because of genetics, maybe because, and typically what we would see is that it tends to run in families. Maybe even potentially if it hasn't been diagnosed, so if we have an older family member or our older generations, these were not necessarily a demographic that was diagnosed. So the diagnosis may have come with a younger generation, a child, for example, but then we can start to see some of those traits in the adults. And this was actually very certainly something that we saw during the pandemic, where a lot of these children that were medicated or because of, you know, ADHD or other presentations were at home, and the parents start to see that, oh, well, actually, goodness, these medications were working for them. And they saw a lot of the traits that they actually present with within their children. So this is often what ends up happening. Maybe the child gets diagnosed and then the parents will say, well, oh, actually, I feel like I have a lot of those traits, and it was just not something that we were really looking at as extensively you know, previously.
What we know, you know, what we hear is a typical, you know, medicine treatment. It's called Adderall. Kids are on it. It's a very touchy subject. You know, they're on it for their whole life. How do you feel about the Adderall?
So, I mean, I think for clarity, I'm a naturopathic clinician. So for me, my first approach will be to look at diet, nutrition, lifestyle, exercise, sleep, all of those things. So that is, I will approach from a root cause perspective. I do think, and again, it's a very personal journey. I understand there's a lot of complexities within family units, within children. But I do think that we jump to medicate very quickly without really digging a little bit deeper, even a little bit deeper, to see if maybe there's something else that's driving this.
Or trying.
Or trying,
other
absolutely,
things.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that parents haven't tried those other things, but maybe it hasn't been consistent. Maybe it hasn't really been the correct advice. Maybe they didn't really get all the support that they need. And I do think that if you go down the medication route, you should still support those other areas as well, because what we see is that there's massive benefits to addressing dietary sources of nutrients. Maybe there's deficiencies there, and maybe actually that means that the medication, you know, don't have to take as much or as often, and maybe we can look at potentially tapering off.
What are some of those lifestyle changes that people can make if they, you know, feel that they're struggling with this, but they don't want to jump into medicine?
Okay, well, the simplest thing that I would do, well, I say simplest, it's not that simple, so I would definitely speak to somebody that has some experience, but often an elimination diet is a really useful first tool. What we've seen, and certainly what I see clinically, is a lot of those that present with ADHD symptoms and even autism symptoms, it may be a food-driven push as far as what's going on within their body. So maybe taking out the glutens, the dairies, the soy, the corn, processed foods and sugars. I mean, my goodness, you only have to walk down the aisles in the supermarkets to see, what do we feed our children first thing in the morning? It's sugar. Yeah. And then we're getting very stressed and medicating them because they can't sit still and they're really hyperactive, or they cannot focus, or they're daydreaming. But it's, what do we feed? What are we nourishing the body with first? Let's look at that. And then we can build on that. So there's other nutrients, obviously, that we look at, like omega-3s, essential fatty acids, particularly EPA. I know DHA is very well studied for brain health, but EPA is really shown to support mood regulation. We look at things like phosphatidylserine. I mean, my goodness, it's a big long word, but we look at these magnesium, zinc, very, very important, and we're often deficient in these. So, yeah.
Well, Dr. Kristina, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface, so we'll have to have you come back on. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where can our viewers at tinyfishco.com, if they want to get in touch with you and learn more about what you offer?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. We'll put that down below for everybody. Dr. Kristina, thank you again.
Oh, thank you.
We're back after this.